This is my presentation on Adlerian individual psychology. So, before we dive into the theory itself, we first have to talk briefly about Dr. Alfred Adler's biography because his life informs a lot of what his eventual theory becomes. So, Alfred Adler was born on Feb 7, 1870, in Vienna, Austria. He is the third child of 8 children, the eldest being Sigmund Adler, not to be confused with Sigmund Freud. Some facts that shaped Adler's theory was that his youngest brother died at a very young age, and actually next to him, and Adler himself almost died of pneumonia at the age of 4. So, as a kid, he was very sickly, and because of that, his mother also pampered him. It was also mentioned that he was in competition a lot with Sigmund Adler, his eldest brother, and his experience of World War One, considering he is born from Vienna, Austria, and his experience with anti-Semitism during the war, shaped his theory to emphasize humanism and collective social interest instead of Freud's focus on aggression. The main premise of the Adlerian perspective is that humans are motivated primarily by social relatedness rather than by sexual urges. Behavior is purposeful and goal directed, and consciousness, more than the unconscious, is the focus of therapy. So, this is quite different from the perspective of Freud, which suggests that sex and aggression are the only motivators for behavior, and that people have little to no choice in shaping their personality. For Adler naman, we are instead motivated by social interest and our striving for superiority and success. And based on this, Adler's view on present behavior is that it is shaped by our views of the future instead of being caused by past experiences. So, put simply, Adler believes that people are born with weak, inferior bodies, a condition that leads to feelings of inferiority and a consequent dependence on other people. Therefore, a feeling of unity with others, aka social interest, is inherent in people and the ultimate standard for psychological health. More specifically, Adler believes that number one, the dynamic force behind people's behavior is striving for success. Number two, people's subjective perceptions shape their behavior and personality. Number three, personality is unified and self consistent. Number four, the value of all human activity must be seen from the viewpoint of social interest. Number five, the self consistent personality structure develops into a person's style of life. And number six, a person's style of life is molded by a person's creative power. So don't worry if these concepts seem quite vague at first. We'll be tackling these as we go through this lecture. So the first concept we'll be tackling is number one, the dynamic force behind people's behavior is striving for success. So according to Adler, everyone begins life with physical deficiencies that activate feelings of inferiority. And these feelings of inferiority are what motivates a person to strive for either success or superiority. Psychologically unhealthy people are said to strive for personal superiority, while healthy people seek success for all humanity. People also strive for success as a means of compensation for feelings of inferiority. So, this is what is called the striving force, and according to Adler, this is innate, and its nature and direction are directed by our feelings of inferiority and goal of superiority. Remember that the end goal of striving is always towards a final goal. According to Adler, each person has the power to create a final goal and is able to do so by as early as 5 years old. This final goal is structured by heredity and environment but is not determined by them. Creative power is people's ability to freely shape their behavior and create their own personality, and the goal of this final goal is to reduce feelings of inferiority and point the person towards either superiority or success. So, as mentioned, there are two ways people strive. So, first one we'll be talking about is the striving for personal superiority. So, personal superiority has been said to be motivated by exaggerated feelings of personal inferiority or an inferiority complex. Their actions are cloaked in social concern, but are actually selfish in nature. So, an example here is that a teacher makes the effort to form close relationships with their students. From an outsider's perspective, this may look like this person is a nice teacher, but in actuality, they're only doing this to feel like they are the best, most dedicated teacher in the school. So, in this example, because of the teacher's inferiority complex, this person develops a superiority complex as a coping mechanism. The second way people strive is striving for success. So, these people are said to be psychologically healthy, and these psychologically healthy people are motivated by social interest. So these people are capable of helping others without expecting a payoff. They don't see others as competition, but rather whom they can cooperate with for social benefit. And they also see daily problems from the viewpoint of society. So for Adler, this really is the end goal of therapy, for people to find meaning in life by striving for success rather than personal superiority. So people strive for success or superiority to compensate for feelings of inferiority, but the manner in which they strive is not shared by reality, but rather their subjective perceptions of reality, otherwise known as fictions or fictionalism. So we go back to the second tenet of Adlerian psychology, which states that people's subjective perceptions shape their behavior and personality. Fictions are ideas that have no real existence, but it influences our lives as though they are real. So, one example here is the thought that men are superior to women. And even though this can't be objectively proven, it can still shape an individual's worldview. So, for men, for example, men who internalize this belief may develop a sense of entitlement, superiority, or dominance over women. And for women naman, women who accept this fiction may limit their aspirations, feel inferior, or struggle with self-worth. Again, most people are motivated not by what is true, but by their subjective perception of what is true. And whether true or false, as mentioned, fictions influence our lives. And as fictions, they do not need to be conscious or understood, but they give each of us a purpose to our actions and are responsible for a consistent pattern that runs through our lives. So another example here is the fiction or the belief that I must always be the best to be valued. So this fiction could influence a person's life in multiple ways. It might drive them to work hard, excel academically, or push themselves in sport, fostering discipline and success. But on the downside, they may experience burnout, anxiety, or low self-worth if they fail to meet their extremely high standards. Now that we've explored how fictions shape our behavior, the question is, how do these fictions develop in the first place? So many of our guiding beliefs are formed in response to personal experiences, challenges, and even physical conditions. In fact, one of the key factors that influence the development of fictions is our physical strengths and weaknesses. So Adler believed that physical deficiencies, whether real or perceived, play a major role in shaping how we see ourselves and the world around us. Physical deficiencies help one develop a fiction about how to overcome these and become big and strong. An example is Beethoven striving to become the best musician during his time, despite his hearing loss. But it's important to remember that while physical deficiencies can influence a person's development, they do not directly determine their style of life. Instead, what truly shapes an individual's style of life is how they interpret and respond to these deficiencies. But wait, you may ask, what is a style of life? So here we'll be discussing the fifth tenet of individual psychology, which states that the self-consistent personality structure develops into a person's style of life. The style of life is basically who we are, our goals, self-concept, feeling for others, and attitudes towards the world. And our style of life isn't supposed to be narrow or rigid. Unhealthy people lead inflexible lives marked by instability to choose new ways of reacting to the environment, while healthy people are diverse and flexible, as they see many ways to strive for success. And again, we have to remember that, according to Adler, we have the power to create our own style of life and shape our own personalities. Each person uses hereditary and the environment as the bricks and mortar to build personality, but always remember that the architectural design reflects the person's own style, and we are our own architects. We have the power and the freedom to be either psychologically healthy or unhealthy. According to Adler, abnormal development happens when people become over-concerned with themselves and start to care little for others, otherwise known as maladjustments. Maladjusted people set extravagant goals as overcompensation for exaggerated feelings of inferiority. And remember, the higher the goal, the more rigid this person will be striving towards this goal. So maladjustments happen based on three contributing factors. So we'll first be talking about the exaggerated physical deformities. According to Adler, actual physical deformities are not what leads to maladjustment. Rather, it is perceived physical limitations. So these can be influenced by personal insecurities, societal attitudes, or early childhood experiences. The second contributing factor to maladjustment is the pampered style of life. So, pampered people have weak social interest but a strong desire to perpetuate the pampered, parasitic relationship they originally had with one or both parents. They expect others to look after them, overprotect them, and satisfy their needs. And contrary to what you may believe, people with a pampered style of life actually feel unloved despite the pampering they receive from their parents due to feelings of neglect, and they themselves are also incapable of fending for themselves because of the overprotection they received from their parents. And the final contributing factor to maladjustment is the negative style of life. These are typically seen in children who felt unloved or unwanted. Abused children, for example, develop little social interest and tend to create a negative style of life. These people have no confidence and they overestimate life's challenges. They have the same characteristics as the pampered style of life in the sense that they both struggle with independence and personal responsibility. Except people with a negative style of life are more suspicious and more likely to be dangerous to others. Because people with maladjustments have very low self esteem, they tend to have safeguarding tendencies to protect their exaggerated sense of self esteem against public disgrace. So here there are three types: one being excuses, two aggression, and three withdrawal. Excuses protects a weak but artificially inflated sense of self-worth and deceive people into believing that they are more superior than they really are. So you can tell these are excuses when people make use of the yes but or if only statements. Like, if only I had studied harder in this exam, maybe I would have gotten a higher score pa. So that's an example of one excuse. So the second type of safeguarding tendency is the tendency of aggression. So people use aggression to safeguard their exaggerated superiority complex. So under aggression, there are three types: depreciation, accusation, and self-accusation. Depreciation is the tendency to undervalue other people's achievements and overvalue your own. So some examples of depreciation is criticism and gossip. The second type of aggression is accusation. This is the tendency to blame others for one's failures to seek revenge, thereby safeguarding one's own self-esteem. An example is the statement, "I wanted to be an artist, but my parents sent me to med school." So in this example, this person is blaming their parent for them not being brave enough to pursue their dream to be an artist. And the last type of aggression is self-accusation. So this comes in the form of self-torture and guilt. It's the converse of depreciation, though both are used to gain personal superiority. In self-accusation, people devalue themselves in order to inflict suffering on others while protecting their own magnified feelings of self-esteem. And lastly, the third type of safeguarding tendency is withdrawal. This is essentially when people run away from their problems, or quote-unquote safeguarding through distance. Under this, there are four modes of withdrawal. So the first mode is standing still. So this is when you don't move in any direction and never do anything to prove that you cannot accomplish your goals. Something to remember this by is the saying, "You can't fail if you don't try." The second mode of withdrawal is moving backwards. This concept is similar to Freud's regression and is designed to elicit sympathy and is offered a lot to pampered children. The third mode of withdrawal is hesitating. So this is when you procrastinate until it's too late on purpose. And though it looks self-defeating, it is actually an attempt to preserve an inflated sense of ego. And the last mode of withdrawal is constructing obstacles. So this is when you build straw houses, then show people that you're able to knock it down to preserve and inflate a false sense of self-esteem. So now that we've talked about some of the tenets that build up Adler's theory, we can now move on to talking about how all of this looks like in an actual therapeutic setting. Adlerian counseling is structured around four central objectives that correspond to the four phases of the therapeutic process. Number one, establishing the proper therapeutic relationship. Number two, exploring the psychological dynamics operating in a client. Number 3, encouraging the development of self-understanding. And finally, number 4, reorientation and re-education. So how do you establish a relationship with the client? So therapeutic progress, according to Adler, is only possible when there is an alignment of clearly defined goals between both the therapist and the client. The focus during this time is to focus on making person-to-person contact with clients rather than starting with the problem. Clients' concerns may surface rather quickly in therapy, but the initial focus should always be on the person and not the problem. One way to do this is to help clients become aware of their assets and strengths rather than dealing continually with their deficits and liabilities. When clients enter therapy, they typically have a diminished sense of self-worth and self-respect. They lack faith in their ability to cope with the tasks of life, and they often feel discouraged. So let's remember the abnormal styles of life, the pampered, the neglected, and the exaggerated physical deficiencies, which all suggests that people with these styles of life often suffer from feelings of severe insecurity and inferiority. As the therapists, our job is to provide support, which is an antidote to despair and discouragement. Specifically, what we can do is work to understand the client's identity and experience of the world, and to understand the patterns, both adaptive and maladaptive, with which the individual meets the challenges of life. A strong therapeutic alliance is the foundation for conducting a thorough assessment of the client's approach to living. So once there is an established therapeutic alliance, we can move on to phase 2, which is assessing psychological dynamics. There are 2 interview forms in assessing psychological dynamics, one being subjective and the other being the objective interview. The subjective interview helps clients tell their life story as completely as possible, and the best subjective interviews treat clients as experts in their own lives, allowing clients to feel completely heard. The subjective interview should extract patterns in the person's life, develop hypotheses about what works for the person, and determine what accounts for the various concerns in the client's life. So one thing you can ask the client at the end of their interview is there anything else you think I should know to understand you and your concerns better? The objective interview seeks to discover information about A, how problems in the client's life began, B, any precipitating events, C, a medical history including current and past medications, D, a social history, E, the reason the client chose therapy at this time, F, the person's coping with life tasks, and finally G, a lifestyle assessment. This lifestyle assessment begins with an investigation of the person's family constellation and early childhood history. Therapists also interpret clients' early memories, seeking to understand the meaning that they have attached to life experiences. Remember, Adler and his theory operates on the assumption that it is the interpretations people develop about themselves, others, the world, and life that govern what they do. So as mentioned, part of the objective interview is to ask about family constellation and early childhood recollections. So we should talk a little bit more about this. So the family constellations operate under the birth order theory, which states that a person's position in their family, either eldest, middle, or youngest, or only child, influences their personality, behavior, and life approach in some ways. So note that these are only general tendencies, and other factors like family environment, parenting styles, and personal experiences also shape a person. This obtaining of family constellation relies heavily on an exploration of the person's family constellation, including the client's evaluation of conditions that prevailed in the family when the person was a young child, or family atmosphere, birth order, parental relationship, and family values. Also the extended family and culture. So some questions that help explore the family constellation is: who was the favorite child? What was your father's relationship with the children, your mother's? Which child was most like your father? In what aspects? How about your mother? Etc. Early childhood recollections are also something that are asked during the objective interview. These are stories of events that a person says occurred one time before he or she was 10 years of age. So these are specific incidents a client recalls, along with the feelings and thoughts that accompany these childhood incidents. Note that this is not about the past, and they don't even need to be entirely accurate, as long as this is the way the client remembers it happening. This provides an understanding of what clients do and how they think in both adaptive and maladaptive ways. And by understanding why we retain these specific memories and what they tell us about how we see ourselves, others, and life in the present, It is possible to get a clear sense of our mistaken notions, present attitudes, social interests, and possible future behavior. So, in therapy, it might look like this. I would like to hear about your early memories. Think about when you were very young, as early as you can remember, before the age of 10, and tell me something that happened one time. Be sure to recall something you remember, not something you were told by others. And after receiving the memory, you may say something along the lines of, what part stands out to you? What was the most vivid part of your early memory? If you played the whole memory like a movie and stopped at one frame, what would be happening? After collecting both Okay, wait. After collecting the family constellation and childhood recollections, we move on to interpreting the findings of the assessment as an avenue for promoting self understanding and insight. Insight, according to Adler, is the understanding of the motivations and patterns that operate in a client's life. Self understanding is only possible when hidden purposes and goals of behavior are made conscious. So in therapy, what we can do is make interpretations based on what is being given to us by the clients. And this is concerned with creating awareness for one's direction in life, one's goals and purposes, private logic, how it works, and one's current behavior. So, one way to go about it is by exploring open ended questions like, I could be wrong, but I'm wondering if, or could it be that, or is it possible that, and because these interpretations are presented in this manner, clients don't feel the need to defend themselves and even argue with the therapist's hunches and impressions. And finally, the last phase of Adlerian therapy is adaptive reorientation and re education. So ultimately, the goal of therapy is to develop a preferred life and the styles of living and patterns that support it. So this allows the client to effectively respond to life stressors in an adaptive way without the need for continuing therapy. So clients are both encouraged and challenged to develop the courage to take risks and make changes in their life. Now that we know the process, we can talk about some important Adlerian techniques to therapy. There are three major techniques, namely 1. The encouragement process, 2. Change and the search for new possibilities, and 3. Making a difference. Let's further discuss this, starting with the encouragement process. So, the encouragement process is centered to all phases of counseling and therapy. This process of increasing the courage needed for a person to face difficulties in life is considered to be the most important aspect of therapy. To develop this courage, people need to become aware of their strengths, what they feel, when they feel they belong and are not alone, and when they have a sense of hope and can see new possibilities for themselves and their daily living. Because clients often do not recognize or accept their positive qualities, strengths, or internal resources, one of the therapist's main tasks, therefore, is to help them do so. The second technique is change and the search for new possibilities. And if clients hope to change, they must be willing to set tasks for themselves in everyday life and do something specific about their problems. This typically happens during the reorientation phase of counseling, wherein clients make decisions and modify their goals. They are encouraged to act as if they were the people they want to be, which can serve to challenge self limiting assumptions. It is even said that real change happens between sessions and not during therapy itself. So, therefore, therapists must offer the client a great deal of support and encouragement during this stage of the process. And last is making a difference. So, a difference in the client may manifest itself by a change in behavior or even just an attitude change or perception change. So, during this time, therapists should focus on motivation modification more than behavior change and encourage clients to make holistic changes on the useful side of living. Reorientation to life that leaves the individual less vulnerable to emotional distress is what is most important at the end of the day. So now that we have an understanding of Adler's theory and how it's practiced in therapy, we can move on to a sample case. I'll be showing you an excerpt of multiple therapy sessions with Gwen, who is the client. That makes use of Adlerian theories and concepts that we just learned today.
I have played by everyone's rules for so long, and now I'm just tired. I just can't seem to win.
If I were facing everything you're facing, I too would be tired and sad, and sometimes irritated. Is it safe to say that your life feels out of control?
Yes, I can't remember the last time I felt I was really in the driver's seat.
So let's see. You take care of your spouse, your mother, check in on your siblings, which, by the way, you have been doing since you were a child. Even though your children are gone, you still listen to their needs on a regular basis and help out in any way you can. You barely see your friends and you can't seem to concentrate on your work enough to feel productive. Did I get all that?
Wow, you got it all.
I'm not even sure I'm close to getting it all. Because all of that sounds like enough to overload anyone.
You're right. I'm totally overloaded. I have to handle all of this, get things done, and get life back to normal, but I just can't get focused.
You're right. There's so much going on. You get distracted, you start running without knowing where you're going, you worry, and the cycle continues.
Wow, I just have so many problems.
Can I ask you a question? What would you be doing with your life if you didn't have all of these problems? How different would your life be?
That's just it. I don't know anymore. Well, I think I wouldn't feel so depressed anymore. I would hope for a better life with my husband and friends. But I don't know if that's even possible right now.
Hey Gwen, welcome back. How have you been since the last time I saw you?
Hi, I still feel a lot of the problems are still there, but I think I just feel like a bit more understood. And actually I feel very hopeful.
Oh, that's good to hear. If it's okay, Gwen, I would like to get to know you a little better, to have a sense of what you have learned from life. Would it be okay if I ask about some important parts of your life so far?
Yes, of course, Doc. Ask away.
Okay, Gwen, so tell me about your family. What were your parents like?
Um, well, my dad was very strict, while my mom was a little bit more gentle, but she worried a lot. And as the eldest, I always felt like I had to be the responsible one.
I see. And how did that responsibility shape you?
Well, I learned early on that it wasn't just about me. I had to take care of others. I put their needs first, even when it meant sacrificing what I wanted to do.
And your siblings, you mentioned having siblings in the intake form. Who do you think was most different from you?
I think maybe my brother Mark. He never worried the way I did. He was just able to let go, while I always had to be the more dependable one.
I see. And who do you think was most like you?
Lily, my youngest sister. She actually looked up to me, and I felt like I had to protect her from the world.
That makes sense, especially with your role you've always played. As the eldest, it sounds like you've had a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. How does that feel for you?
I guess I've always just done it, you know. It's like I had no choice but to take care of everything and everyone. I never really thought about what I wanted.
Okay, Gwen. Last time we talked about your family and early responsibilities. Now, I'd like to explore your development. You've mentioned your tendency to take charge. How has that shaped your relationships?
Well, I guess some of my friends think I'm a bit bossy. My sister especially. She still thinks I'm bossy actually.
It actually sounds like you're a natural leader in your relationships. But I wonder how that affects your ability to connect with others in a more relaxed and equal way.
Yeah, I guess I don't always know how to be just a friend without taking on that helper role. It's like I'm always the one who has to take charge even when I don't want to.
Mm, it must be exhausting, especially when you've carried that responsibility your entire life. How about work? You mentioned you've always worked, even from a young age.
Yeah, I started when I was 14 actually. I lied about my age just so I could work at a restaurant in the neighborhood. I've always been someone who just took on more and more. Even when I went to college, I worked. I took care of other people, and now it's the same. I'm still taking care of others, even without the pressure of my job.
That seems like a lot, actually. It's quite impressive. But I imagine it takes a toll on you. How do you manage it all?
I guess I just keep going. I don't really know how else to do it. There's always something that needs to be done, even with Ron, my husband. We're both so busy with our lives, with our work, that I feel like we're growing apart. But we don't talk about it much. We just stay busy, you know.
Mm, it sounds like both work and your sense of responsibility to others have become a way for you to avoid addressing some of your deeper issues, maybe, like with your marriage. Okay, Gwen, it seems like our time together for this session is about to come to an end. So, for our next session, would it be okay if I ask you to do an exercise that will help us understand more about the beliefs that have shaped you?
Yeah, okay, sure. What do I need to do?
I'd like you to prepare a list of at least 6 early memories, things that have happened before you were around 8 years old. They don't have to be very big or dramatic, just moments that stand out to you.
6? That seems like a lot. But I'll try.
When you think of a memory, picture it like it's a scene in a movie, and then pause the scene at a single moment, like a frame. Focus on what's happening in that exact moment. What do you see? What do you feel?
Alright. And then what?
Ask yourself, what was your reaction? How did you respond to what was happening? If this memory was a newspaper story, for example, what would the headline be?
So like young girl saves the day again? Or maybe Gwen fixes everything? Kind of thing?
Exactly. These memories will help us see the deeper beliefs that have guided your life.
Okay, I'll give it a shot.
Great. We'll go over them in our next session and see what they reveal.